Please welcome Manuel Vivo.
Hi all, thanks for coming. I'm Manuel Vivo. I work at Google in the Android Developer Relations team. And what I do is basically help developers succeed. So if you have any question or something about Kotlin or any other matter, you can contact me or my team and we'll try to help you out. Today I want to talk about Android meets Kotlin, a love story. We are going to go through the process that Google followed to adopt Kotlin as a now first-class citizen and now Kotlin first initiative that we just announced at Google I/O. So the story started. It's not working. Wait. I don't know what's going on. There we go. The story started in 2017, and Kotlin was announced as a first-class citizen in Android. And that means that we are going to give support to both documentation and the language itself in the Android world. That means Android Studio, code samples, and everything is going to be available as well. Going to be available in Kotlin. But if we take a look back, 2017 was 2 years ago. But if you take back, like Android SDK, Android in Java was announced in 2008. So that's relatively like 10 years now. It's not that long ago. And C++ support, the Android NDK, was announced the year after. So it hasn't been that long time. And now, as you can see, only Java and C++ are supported languages. But now Kotlin is the third language. And for us, that's a big investment. Because adding a new programming language as a recommended way, it's a pretty long process that it requires a lot of thought process as well. And so, as I said before, at Google I/O, we announced that we are going to be Kotlin first. And what that means is that now we are going to see everything that we do, it's going to be in Kotlin first. As in, for example, some code labs are going to be only available in Kotlin. The documentation is going to be in both Java and Kotlin. But then, for example, we are working on some tools that are going to be Kotlin only, as we will see through the presentation. So this presentation is about what we did between Google I/O 2017 and 2019, and what we are going to do in the future. So the phase 0 for us was like, we are not trying to break anything. So we are adopting Kotlin as a first-class citizen. We are not going to try to break anything. I mean, this is difficult because stuff always breaks, but we are trying to do our best. And so our phase 0 at Google is as many other companies. So for example, we had to assess the technology. We had to assess the language. Is that going to be bulletproof or going to have everything that we are going to need in the future? We also had to get the buy-in from the execs. We have to convince directors and VPs to say, hey, Kotlin is something. Supporting a whole new language for Android is a massive job that we all have to do. And also we had to make a Kotlin plugin that was in IntelliJ part of Android Studio, because we want everyone to use it straight away. The idea is some tools like lint checks, we have to improve it. We have to check that Kotlin syntax is as it is supposed to be written. Allow refactoring from Java to Kotlin, integrated in Android Studio, etc. And also, as I said before, the documentation and sample code should be available in Kotlin too. And one of the main problems, well, it's not a problem, it's something we have to do as many other companies, you have to onboard the whole team. And the first team that kind of got up to speed with Kotlin was the developer relations team, because we need to know what other developers expect from Kotlin and then trying to give that feedback to our engineers. That was kind of at Google, but now, as I said, now phase 0, for example, in your company, if you adopted Kotlin already, you had to do through the same process. So you had to assess the tech, trying to convince your executives or your manager to use Kotlin, which is not an easy task, and also from your team. And then training the team, which is always a bit difficult because some people, prefer to be where they are. They don't want to learn anything new because it's difficult, it's time-consuming, and also agree on style guidelines and start adding stuff to your code base with Kotlin. That was phase 0. Phase 1 is now I started writing Kotlin code, but now all my Java APIs look ugly. So for example, if you try to use the shared preference API from Kotlin, and it's written in Java, of course. So you have to do shared preferences.edit, put boolean, apply, all this boilerplate code just to store something on your device. However, we added this kind of set of APIs that we call KTX that give Kotlin-friendly syntax to those APIs written in Java. So this is kind of an add-on you can add to your dependencies to have better syntax or better code with Kotlin. So the same code that we saw before, now you can do shared preferences.edit, you put inside what you want to do, and that's it. You don't have to call apply, etc. And if you take a look, as you said, that this is syntactic sugar boilerplate code that we avoid. But if you take a look at the code itself, we are just leveraging Kotlin. And so we can add, for example, an extension function on shared preferences, and this is the code that you can find in the library. So you can call edit and apply, and you remove all that boilerplate code, for example, with extension functions. But not only with extension functions, you can use the Kotlin language to the rescue to have Kotlin-friendly APIs without the need of all the Java verbosity. And so you can use extension functions, operator overloads, as we will see in a second, DSLs or type-safe builders, and also property delegates. We are going to see an example of this now in a second. So for example, for the operator overloads, we can use it, for example, for the preference group. So now, as part of the KTX library regarding preferences, you can, this is the code. Actually, you override the operator get, and then you can access with the square brackets just to get something from that preference group. Or the same plus assign, which you write plus assign in your IDE, and that's it. And you override that with like add preference. So this is kind of like better Kotlin-friendly APIs. For DSLs, for example, you can find an example of this in the navigation library. And then with DSLs, you can define how you want your app to navigate. You can define the navigation graph here. And with property delegates, it's the same. So if you use the navigation library, the Android navigation library from Jetpack, if you send some arguments to another screen, you can get those arguments from the destination fragment, for example, with nav args. And here we are using the by. So you can say args by nav args, and you can have the lazy delegates there. And also, as I said, like we are adding, for example, Kotlin-only documentation as well. For example, now in the documentation, you have two tabs. You have Java and Kotlin. So you can switch between those to see the documentation just in Kotlin or just in Java. And so, because there are some only like Kotlin unique features, you can see also the documentation of those methods. And then you can see it like that. For example, shared preferences.edit, and this is the documentation of the method that we saw before. So that was phase 1. We added KTX to help you write better Kotlin code and try to get away with that Java verbosity. And then phase 2 is like, okay, we know that Kotlin is getting bigger and getting more popular out there. And now I want to make my API place nice with Kotlin. And with that, there are some sort of samples of Kotlin friendliness. And if you write your API in Java, for example, if you annotate your methods with nullability annotations, if someone wants to use this from Kotlin or want to refactor from Java to Kotlin, it automatically in Kotlin is going to appear the nullability, the question mark to check if something is nullable or not. So if you write APIs in Java, you should try to annotate all your methods with this. Methods and parameter lists and everything. Also, if you accept a lambda in your API, that lambda should be the last parameter, because with that, in Kotlin, you can use what it's called the lambda syntax, which you can write something like this. So the method is blah, and then you can have the lambda straight away. And also try to avoid hard keywords in name. So don't use in for your method or when, stuff like that, because that kind of gets into conflict with Kotlin keywords. And the same for the property access method naming. If you want to set or get a property, try to call it like that, like with the getX or setX, because then in Kotlin you just can access that property or that method with dot name of the property. And also, single abstract method interface is the same way as we did before with the lambda parameter. This is very nice to write in Kotlin. And now you can check, if you are writing a Java API, you can check how Kotlin friendly it is in Android Studio. So you can go into the preferences and then check for Kotlin interoperability. And that's going to give you a few hints to refactor and make it more Kotlin friendly. Cool. So phase 3 now is that, okay, you are a Java user, but now you might be missing out a few things. So this is stuff that we just did for Kotlin. And here we can talk about Android Jetpack and Kotlin coroutines. Obviously, if coroutines cannot be used straight away from Java, you cannot call it from Java directly. So, for example, in Android Jetpack and with coroutines, we added the view model coroutine scope as part of the in our view model class from Jetpack. Also, the lifecycle coroutine launchers, and we will see in a second in a second now. Also, Room, our library to store things into a database, supports suspend functions. So this is how Android Jetpack plays along well with coroutines. Same with Work Manager, also supports coroutines with a coroutine worker that also accepts a suspend function to do some work. Live Data also has a coroutine builder. For example, as I said before, the safe arcs also can be generated and taken from Kotlin. And more stuff are coming, as we will see. And so, for example, the view model coroutine scope, obviously you cannot do this from Java, but if you are in Kotlin and your view model, you can use view model scope.launch, and then you can call suspend functions there. You don't have to define a scope for your view model all the time. If you import the library that contains view model scope, you just can use it without having to, call scope.cancel when the view model is getting cleared. So for this lifecycle aware coroutine scopes, if you are in a lifecycle owner, for example, an activity or a fragment, you can call, lifecycle scope.launch to execute something, or launch when created, that it's going to be called once. And there are some helpful methods that you can use to use coroutines in your lifecycle owner classes. Also, as I said before, the work manager with the coroutine worker, the do work function, I don't know if you can see it clearly, but it's a suspend function. And by default, it uses dispatchers.default, so it's going to run what it's inside in the background. And so you don't have to worry about all the boilerplate code to move the execution to something, off the main thread and all that. And same as I said with suspend functions, you can have a function which is probably a transaction that you want to do. You can make it suspend, because now insert user, that class or the method of that insert user is generated by Room. You can call it because that can be a suspend function as well. So this plays really nice with coroutines. Cool. So that was stuff that you might be missing out if you are a Java user. And now phase 4 at Google was, okay, I'm just going to write Kotlin from now on, but I see you are still using Java. Okay, so if you write Kotlin, how can you make Java consumers happier? And there are a few things that can be a bit helpful here. So for example, if you are calling Kotlin from Java, is that, for example, you can, if you don't do anything special, you can get code like this. My class.companion gets something weird name there, or text utils kt, what is that, join strings, or null, because Java doesn't support default parameters. So how can you make all of this a bit nicer? So there are a few annotations that you can add to your methods or to the file level to make something plain nicer. For example, if you add at the top of your file, if you use add file JVM name text utils, the consumer can call text utils dot name of the function instead of the generated text utils kt dot name of the function. So Java user here can see a better API name in this case. And for example, if you want to make something in a companion object to be called as if it was a Java static property, you can use the add JVM static annotation on a property, and it can be called in the same way as if it was a Java static property. And as I said before, with the default parameters, if you annotate a function with JVM overloads, Java is gonna kind of create in the Java side, you're gonna see different methods with different APIs that take those default parameters in the function. So you can use, for example, before, you can call this as object method with defaults ABC, and all the nulls are gonna be handled for you. So you don't have to do anything if you annotate that method with JVM overloads. And what about the performance impact? So this is usually one of the main drawbacks. People don't want to use Kotlin. It says that it impacts performance, that the build time is a bit slower, but is that true? So for example, if we see this Kotlin code, and you can see that I have a companion object. And the companion object is that you can call it, from Java, kind of in a static way. Problem with that is that it generates a lot of boilerplate code. And this is the bytecode that you would see that can go into your app if it was like Java, right? So Java doesn't really like companion objects. And for example, you just want to call something static. You don't want all this code to be generated for you. And that's where R8 comes into place. So R8 is kind of a ProGuard that we had in the past. That R8 is a tool developed at Google, which is trying to optimize the Java bytecode, which is going to be packed into your final application. So you cannot see it pretty nice, but you can see that all this, like the new object that it created, companion, got removed. All of these lines got removed too, so it doesn't have to create a whole new class and an instance of that class for the static one, and then R8 generates automatically the public static hello function that you would create it otherwise in Java. So you can write Kotlin code and don't worry that much about performance, because R8 can do all of that for you. You don't have to worry about writing the code that you want to do, not optimize it. So what's next? What is the next phase? So if you are not using Kotlin, there is something cool that we are making, and you might not be able to use it if you are a Java user, and that's Jetpack Compose. So Jetpack Compose is a new library, UI library that we are working on, which is completely unbundled from the operating system. So the problem, why are we doing this? So this is a new UI toolkit. And if you remember now, for example, if we want to update text view, or if we want to update a widget, we have to make the updates in a new OS release. It is not that we can update something quickly, or you cannot update something quickly. So here with Compose, we are trying to unbundle the UI from the operating system code, from the SDK. And so here it's experimental right now, so it's not production ready by any means. This is just an FYI if you are interested in this kind of topic, that you can research more on your own. But it uses a custom Kotlin compiler plugin for everything that we want to do. And that's why it's going a bit slow, because we're also partnering with JetBrains to work together on this, to make the Kotlin compiler better and to have something that we want to do. And I says it's not even alpha quality. So stay tuned for ADS, Android Developer Summit. We will announce a few things, but it's not going to be ready anytime soon. So for example, with this piece of code, so here we are defining a function greeting that takes a name as a parameter, as a string, and we can call text hello name. If you do that, that will print hello something on the screen, and that's because we are annotating this function with add composable, and that composable can be called from, it is Jetpack Compose, and kind of the naming is there, but that is gonna add a text hello name to the UI hierarchy automatically. So now you can use we'll see kind of a declarative UI with nested functions and all that, and all of these are gonna be added to your UI on the screen. So if you are interested in this topic, this is the first announcement we did for Jetpack Compose, and it was at Google I/O this year, and the talk is called Declarative UI Patterns. And so what's next? What are we preparing for Kotlin? So we are going to add more support to coroutines. So we are working on a lot of new cool stuff to integrate it with Jetpack as a whole. New language features that are coming also from Kotlin. New libraries that we are working on. I cannot say a lot, but if you tune into AVS, in AVS we are going to announce a few things more. Kotlin multi-platform also, it's going to be a good thing that Carlos Mota talked in DroidCon Lisbon, for example. And so we, as soon as Kotlin multi-platform is in a better shape, we are going to start integrating it with our products and all that. And also improving the developer experience, the documentation, more code samples, more code labs to refactor from Java to Kotlin, and stay tuned. So I'm part of the Android DevRel team, or developer relations. So what are we doing to help the community? So we have a few open source applications. So we have, for example, the one I'm working on right now, it's in Google I/O and Android Developer Summit app. So Android Developer Summit is at the end of October. And so these are open sourced applications that they are written in Kotlin. For example, Sunflower, it's another app that is using most of the Android Jetpack libraries. So if you are trying to use navigation or live data, data binding, you can check it out because it has all the code in it. Plaid as well, it's an app that was first started by Nick Butcher as a way to showcase animations, and now it was a monolithic app that we try to modularize it, kind of what you would do in your application at work. So all of that, you can find it there. And also TV, which is an app developed by Chris Baines, and he's also adding all the new cool stuff to the application. And that's it. If you want to learn more about Android in general, I recommend you following the Android developers Medium accounts, because everything that DevRel does, we post it there. And that's my Twitter handle in case you want to ask me anything. So thank you so much for your time.